Yeah, well, so it's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Kwan Tan. He's the CTO and co-founder of IQM Finland, which is, I guess many of you know. Kwan graduated with a PhD in electrical engineering from University of New South Wales in 2011. And after spending time as a researcher at Microsoft in Sydney, he came to Finland and worked as a postdoc and then as a research fellow on superconducting qubits. Finally, in 2019, he co-founded IQM with the mission to make quantum computing a reality in Europe. Give it away.
All right. Yes, thanks a lot, Uwe. Thanks for the very nice introduction, and also thanks for the invitation to your inaugural summer school. This is, of course, an honor for IQM, and I guess since this session is about startup, I would like to use the opportunity to introduce the company, and then also talk a little bit about the pains of a growing startup and what we have done and achieved so far, and what we look to do next. So basically, this is just an outline of what I'm going to talk about, and let's just start with the introduction. So as you know, as a company, you need to have a vision, and the vision of IQM Finland is to, we kind of see that quantum computing would create completely new markets, and whoever that leads this sort of technology now, of course, will benefit in decades to come. And and IQM is very well positioned in realizing this vision, because we have, as you have seen in the news, successfully landed our first sales case. And then, of course, as the investment into quantum is growing over time in Europe and other parts of the world, we see that this is a great opportunity also from the business sense that we would start delivering quantum computers as products. So it is also IQM's vision to at least the first phase have this European leadership position, and then after that expand globally. Of course, also for a company, you have to have a really great mission statement. And so over the years, IQM basically started in 2019. We started building our mission statement. So this didn't just come overnight, but we started thinking, okay, what is something that you can use to inspire people in the company and also outside, and what is something that is also far reaching in terms of your vision, and what is something that's actually practical. So we came up with this statement that we are building world-leading quantum computers for the well-being of humankind now and for the future. So this is something that is what we hold dear every day when we come to work at IQM. So the another question that we get asked a lot is like, why now? Why quantum computing now and not like 5 years ago or 5 years later? We have seen like really great results coming from Google in their 2019 quantum supremacy experiments, where they used 53 qubits to do a random sampling problem that it's very difficult for it to be achieved computationally using classical computers. So the question is that, can we turn this random sampling problem into something useful? And at IQM, we believe we have the technology to do so. I'll talk a little bit more about this, what our strategy is, basically through co-design. And then also at the same time, we are building up the right team, the technology, and also market intelligence, and also go-to-market strategy of how we deliver these kind of computers so that we can have a sustainable research and development and also expansion of the company. So as an organization, we have grown really quickly. So since July 2019, we have about 100 employees right now, actually above 100 employees span across 2 locations. One is in Espoo, Helsinki, Finland, and the other one is in Munich in Germany. So this pool of people, they are quite diversified. We have like 26 nationalities altogether. And so since we are also a deep tech company, we have more than PhD people with PhDs titles in the company, and 5 actually with professor level equivalent scientists actually working in the company. And at the same time, we are also training 10 PhD students within the company and taking in many very brilliant interns, many of them coming from Switzerland. So all these talents actually come from across the globe, as I've mentioned earlier, and then they are also coming from really good universities and also corporates. So the journey. So of course, the whole operation of IQM started in 2019, but the actual, back of envelope drawings in possibly in a garage actually happened already in April 2018. And then during that time, we started thinking, okay, well, what is the way for us to actually, make quantum computers useful and also deliver it to customers in the future, or some enterprise customers initially, and after that to the mass market, so that people can actually benefit from the all the promises of quantum computing. And then this actually took quite some time for us to come together for us, like the co-founders, think of a really good story and how to go out and convince the investors. And so you can see that the time period is actually quite long. It's more than a year. And only in July 2019 did we close the seed funding round of, at that time, one of the largest in Finland. It's about 11.5 million euros. But of course, if you want to embark on a journey to be one of the hardest devices human has ever made, then this is really a very small sum. But at the same time, we receive a lot of support from our neighbors. Like Blue Force is one of them, that they already believed in us at the very beginning, even before we closed the seed funding round, that they would already start fabricating the fridges that we would like to have when we start our company, and actually deliver in really record time of about 2 months. And then we got everything started at that time. So we have the first fridges in September 2019 already, and the second one in November 2019. And this allows us to ramp up our testing and production facilities. And then back in March last year, we also established a subsidiary called IQM Germany in Munich. And this subsidiary actually is focusing on a little bit towards this co-design, which I will talk a little bit later. And then also at the same time, we are involved in a lot of grant applications, consortium, individual ones, because when you have this funding, it's not that you spend it, but you have to somehow figure out a ways to capitalize on this funding. You get loans, you talk to a lot of this like Business Finland equivalent, like this, that supports all these startups, and try to attract as much funding as you can to do the R&D and also expansion of the company. And we are also quite unprepared, I have to say, at the very beginning. We started, in a lab, which we thought that, okay, we're never going to sell a quantum computer in the next 5 years. So let's start really small. And then before the end of the year, we already start to realize that, okay, we are outgrowing ourselves. So we have to move to a new facility, and we have to, shut down the fridges, move the fridges to even a new facility. And then we started everything. And we of course already have the process in place, because moving fridges is something that you would have to do at some point, because you want to deliver quantum computers to customers, and then it could be like cross borders. And then we started setting up everything, and then we again show our technologies, demonstrate our technologies, especially in this reset of the qubit, which I will show later. And then at the end of 2020, we also closed our Series A1 round, which is about 40 million euros, and that helped us expand even more. So since then, we have done quite much. So we closed also our first sales case with VTT. So this was an open tender, and I have to say the competition was quite fierce, and we won just very narrowly. And at the same time, we demonstrated our 2-qubit gates, we received more public funding, and then we are also leading at this point a German consortium to deliver co-designed quantum computers to research quantum computers to some supercomputing centers and research centers. At the same time, we ramp up our sort of design flow and also the fabrication efforts, and we managed to control the quality of the devices coming out of our the shared clean room that we are using. And now we can achieve quite consistently high fidelities for our qubits, and also across like a whole qubit chip. So it's no longer one single hero sample that we get running. And I'm also happy to announce that we internally are calibrating our 5-qubit processors, and we will deliver soon one of this system to VTT, so to speak. And at the same time, there's a lot of going on also on the software effort. So initially we started as a hardware company, but we realized that, okay, you need some software as well, otherwise you won't be able to control your qubits. And we developed those in-house, and at the same time, we figured that, okay, if you want to design more and more complex, quantum circuits, you better have a really good design flow and automated design software. And that's why we happy also to announce that we have published this so-called KQ circuits. This is actually a design tool that we use internally in-house that allows us to design this and also route our qubits in a quantum processor quite efficiently. And at the same time, it has this 3D integration capabilities in there. And after that, we also integrate at the very high level with Circ, so that people who have programmed circuits using Circ can eventually utilize our quantum hardware as well. So now I switch gear a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit about IQM's approach to quantum computing. So how do we visualize our business strategy from the short term, medium term to the long term? So initially, in the very short term, our aim is to commercialize the early quantum computers, which we call research quantum computers, that might not necessarily help us achieve quantum advantage, but still, nevertheless, very useful to kickstart ecosystem and use for research and educational purposes. So this is exactly one of the machines that we delivered to VTT. And of course, seeing all the news coming out from Europe and elsewhere, you can see that there's a growing demand for such systems in years to come. So in the medium term, of course, we need to achieve quantum advantage. And of course, in the medium term, we don't foresee, quantum error correction to be, quite widespread, at least not for the next decade, that we can make something meaningful out of it. But the question is, can you then, do something through co-design of hardware and software and algorithms, and see if you can achieve quantum advantage already with the a little bit higher end system compared to the ones that we have today. And this is actually an active effort from the company, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. And in the long term, of course, we still foresee that quantum error correction is needed, because that's when you have a general purpose quantum computer that you can solve pretty much all the things that quantum computers can very efficiently. So so this is like what I mentioned earlier. So the early systems, we use it to create a market for quantum computers. And then in the co-design systems, we look for expansion of the market. And then finally, for this universal quantum computers, we still foresee that it is not something that people would just install in their, in their offices as a desktop, but something that is actually quite suitable to be installed in high-performance computing centers. And therefore, we are looking towards integration of these quantum computers as a form of accelerator there. So yeah, just to give you an overview of the system that we plan to deliver to VTT. So this is our first reference case, and the aim is to deliver like a 50 qubit machine by 2023. And this project actually comes in 3 phases. So the first phase is that we will deliver the first 5 qubit system there, and then upgrade it to 20 qubits, and then in 2022, and then in 2023, get it to 50 qubits. So this is a substantial investment from of course, the VTT and also the government. And we're happy to announce, like a couple of days ago, VTT released a press saying that they find that everything is going smoothly, and then they are really happy. So it's always great to have your first customer as a happy customer. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, as you can see here, there are more and more investment pouring into quantum computing, and this investment is actually accelerating as a function of time. So we see already in the first phase of this delivery of research quantum computers, it's a viable business model. Of course, this process is it's not as simple as you just go there and sell the quantum computers, but you have to talk to the people there and make sure that everyone, from the politicians to the academia to the industry, actually believe that this is something that's going to be useful for them. So this is like a huge effort in terms of business development also, and but we already have with this first reference case in VTT, we have a sort of an idea how we could go in and propose a really good solution to all these different countries. So in the second phase, like in the market sort of expansion, where we want to try to achieve quantum advantage, we kind of have this idea, like the competition now is at more than 50 qubits, and their aim is to go all the way to the end to have this quantum error corrected computers that can solve pretty much all the different problems using the same machine. But in our case, IQM at the moment is at 5 qubits, but then we kind of have to think of what's the other solutions that will put us in this niche market where we can say, okay, is there any application specific solutions we can provide to enterprise customers? Because enterprise customers nowadays, they don't want to solve everything. They just want to focus on certain topics like quantum finance or quantum chemistry, whatever that's relevant to them. And then in that case, we will find the sort of algorithms that would be able to solve their problem and also can be run efficiently in our machines. And then we start to design our QPU architecture so that it can be used to efficiently implement these algorithms. So for example, in this general machines, people typically have this square lattices. In our case, it could be something that, for example, mimics a molecule. In a way that you can solve, like you can do quantum simulation already with whatever technologies that we have at present day, right, in the near future. So that's the idea. So of course, to initiate conversations with enterprise customers, it's not so easy because most of them, they are at different levels of understanding of quantum technology. Some of them, they already have internal quantum teams. Some, they just want to know what's out there. Is this a scam or something like that? So in our business development and marketing side, we have to go directly into the enterprise customers and start conversation with them at different levels, so that we can identify, okay, in their technology roadmap versus our technology roadmap, is there some crossing points where we can say we have certain technologies that we think we can help in their problems. Like for example, simulation of certain chemical molecule is one of them. And then we distill those problems into some algorithms, and we do some initial simulations to see if we can achieve any advantage, and then go through this process with them. And at some point, make some proof of concept quantum computers that we show that we can achieve advantage. And then at some point, also discuss with them, is that something that you would like to see towards advantage? So basically they'll put in more investment at different phases to push it to some something that's useful for them. And of course, this sort of business model is something that we are creating as we speak internally. And of course, different customers, they have different needs, different investment capabilities, and we are trying to tailor this to different customers at the same time. So in the last phase, of course, HPC integration is one of the big things. Even now, like if you go to big HPC providers like Atos, people have been talking about having quantum computers as an accelerator, because yeah, they have been using like GPUs for accelerating certain computation already, and even machine learning chips. And then the next big thing, of course, is quantum. And of course, this is not as easy as integrating like classical systems in there, because you have to worry also about these classical quantum interfaces. And is there some hybrid algorithms that you can run such that some parts actually go to classical computing and some goes to quantum, and then you merge them together to have a meaningful result. And then, yeah, all these interface technologies are of great interest to all these HPC providers. And of course, then we are in a good position, I have to say, being one of the scalers in Atos scalar programs. So finally, in this aspect, I would say having partners is very important for a startup, because like it is not only something that says that we are doing business with someone, but we also get like some big names to actually vouch for our technology. And this is something that's not very easy, because you kind of have to make sure that you have a technology and a story that makes sense for all these big partners. And this is something that we initially struggle a lot as a startup company, because nobody knows IQM, nobody knows what we are doing, and very few even knows what quantum is about. And we spend a lot of effort in terms of the initial discussion, also mutual learning from each other, and at some point finding a common ground where we can start developing these technologies. And yeah, so finally, I would like to switch gear a little bit to talk about the latest results that we have. Again, this is not something that's going to be very coherent. I'm just throwing all the results that we have, because we are developing so many things in parallel. And just a few highlights that I'm allowed to show here. So yeah, so the sort of results is divided into two sections. One of them is about hardware, and the other one naturally is about software. And the first case for hardware is that we have this sort of unique selling point in the technology within the company, that we would like to use a so-called quantum circuit refrigerator as a form of reset of our quantum bits. And of course, this goes back to 2017, when we discovered that we can use this so-called NIS junction, so normal metal insulator superconductor tunnel junctions, and you put the pairs of them in a resonator, in this case a superconducting coplanar waveguide resonator, and by just tuning the voltage across the junction, we realized that we can have this like photon assisted tunneling absorption of the photons from the cavity or the resonator itself. So if you look at this energy diagram, you can see that a certain bias, there's no tunneling current, except for when you have photons in the vicinity or in the environment that will kick the photon tunneling between the superconductors, superconducting tunnel junctions there. So here, of course, in the graph to the right, you can see that as a function of bias across this junction, at which point where this sort of absorption becomes maximum. So of course, naturally, in this case, in our engineer environment, it is quite close to the gap of this NIS junctions. So with this idea in mind, what we do is that we then integrate this whole system into a superconducting transmon qubit. And as you can see here, initially, what you do to see that, to show that you can actually do this absorption of single photons in a qubit is to excite a qubit naturally, and then do a sort of drive to the quantum circuit refrigerator, a fast drive, and then that would actually allows you to absorb the photon from the qubit when it's in the excited state. So here you can see that in the graph, when you don't do any excitation to the QCR, then basically the qubit remains in the natural decay state. But when you have this reset powers going to the QCR, you immediately reset it to the ground state. So this is an ongoing project, and even at the very initial experiments, we find that we can do already quite high fidelity for the reset, about 96% and below 100 nanoseconds. So of course, there's a lot of optimization that we can still do. And this is something that we're working on as we speak. So the second hardware results I'd like to show is that, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we have been ramping up the production of our quantum processors. And of course, naturally, you need to have consistency of the coherence times across all the qubits. And we have successfully shown that we can consistently manufacture many single qubits on the single chip to have really high or relatively high coherence times. And that, of course, allows us to sort of perform randomized benchmarking and extract our single qubit native gate fidelity. And in this case, it's like 99.91%. Of course, there are room for improvement, and we believe that it's at least going in the right direction. Of course, like to have quantum processors, you not only need to have qubits, you have to couple them together, but also you need to have like a really good readout optimization. And typically in readout sense, we need to have a quantum limited amplifier. In this case, it's the 2-bar, and then after that you have this amplification chain going up to the room temperature. And here we are constantly improving this because readout fidelity is one of the key technologies that we need to excel in. And the fidelity we get so far with all the 2-bar technologies that we get from VTT is about 98.4%, and this is at the threshold that we are limited by the coherence of the qubit itself. So room for improvement, yes, but we are slowly getting there. And of course, like in any qubit technology, you need to have you need to show that you will be able to couple 2 qubits together and perform 2 qubit gates. And here I've shown a device, a 3 qubit device where you use the middle qubit as a coupler. And with this sort of tunable coupler and tunable qubit architecture, we have shown that we can effectively turn off the coupling or on the coupling between the 2 qubits just by driving the coupler itself. And with all these fidelities that we have for this multi-qubit device, we have achieved quite high or relatively high 2 qubit gate fidelity. So this process tomography is about 97.3%. And it's still not at the stage where it is coherence limited. We believe that there's some leakage to the the middle coupler, but at the same time, this is something that we are improving quite much. Of course, our final qubit 2 qubit gate or multi is not the one that you've seen earlier. That's just the traditional XMONs. But with the new improved design, we expect to push this number even higher. And then switching gear from hardware to software, software is of course very, very important in terms of like designing your processes to controlling them. And one of the critical things inside the company is that we realized very early on that you need to have a really good design flow within the company, from the actual design of the processes to fabrication to characterization. And this cycle has to be as efficient as possible. And if you simulate something that is not good and then you start fabricating them and measure, typically you see a lot of stuff that you don't understand, and that's pretty bad. And in our case, we are trying to improve this. We are trying to create our own so-called synopsis or cadence equivalent of our design flow, and happy to show that some these results actually is very good agreement with our measurement data, and we can see that the coherence times actually agrees really well with the precise limit that we anticipate from our simulation. So this is like of course what we have now is a little bit more advanced, but this is what I can show at the moment. And finally, for software, we have also developed this KQ circuit. So this KQ circuit is actually part of our design flow that we actually have open source. I think it's beginning of this month. And the aim is, of course, like to benefit the community as a whole, to utilize the software to do the quantum circuit design. My personal experience is that I've been to so many labs and I realized that there's a huge need for such a software, but people are typically just hack and slash, hack all this stuff together, and also at the same time spending a lot of resources making not so scalable software. And in the company, we figured that since we are using this to design our quantum processors, why don't we just open it up so that people can also use it? This actually also is very useful in the sense that it allows wafer scale photomask generation, parameterized, of course, so that you can easily make your photomask and then you do your fabrication in no time. And as I mentioned earlier, this is exactly the same technology we use in our company. So you can expect like active development and support from the IQM's design and software teams. So anyone interested, yeah, just check out the link below here, and then yeah, and any questions or anything, feel free to contact the team at IQM. So finally, one of the main thing of being in business and startup is that branding is also very important. So this is like very important for any business, and also quantum computing startup. It is even more so. I have to say that all these medias that I put here are mainstream media. These are earned media. We are not paying them to sort of feature our stories. And of course, this is very important and also a very effective way to get our name out there. This will create sort of a positive sort of feedback loop for the company, not in terms of only on funding, but also on collaboration, and also getting really good people to join us, because we are getting a little bit more well-known than before. And then, of course, we have also garnered a lot of media headlines in the past year within the company. I have to say that we have also really good Series A investors coming into company. Most prominent one, of course, is Helmut Jägel from BioNTech. So typically in a startup world, you see a lot of investors. They have a lot of money, but at the same time, you have to always think, is that a good idea? Because you have to have people that not only comes into a company just for the short, break where they can get a lot of ROI in a very short period of time, but also at the same time, you need to find people that can have a vision and really invest in the technology and believe in the company. And yeah, so of course, BioNTech is a very similar case in the sense that the investment in the company actually started in 2008, and the reward actually comes quite much later. So Helmut has this experience, and hopefully it will bring us to the next level in terms of the sort of growth of the company. So that's I think that's it from me. Hope you enjoy the talk, and if there's any question, happy to answer.
Excellent. Thank you, Quan. perfectly on time as well. And maybe I can start off with a question from my side. So I was actually curious about the quantum circuit refrigerator. I'm sure you did a lot of simulations on these, and was wondering if the reset on the qubit, how it compares to the, like, what people do sometimes with the FPGA reset, or so measuring the qubit and flipping it, or some unconditional reset protocol that uses non-computational states and that decay very quickly.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a very good question. So in our case, it's an unconditional reset. So
Yeah.
basically, you can reset it from any arbitrary state, and it's basically absorption of radiation from the actual device, and it's in very close proximity to the device. Therefore, it's a very fast operation. I think in the first paper where we showed the reset of a resonator state, it was below what we can measure actually with our instrumentation at the time. It was below 4 nanoseconds. Of course, like, what's the fidelity? That's another question. But in principle, we believe that this is something that can be extremely fast.
Okay. Since there's no questions in the Q&A box, I'll just continue because I have a few more.
Okay.
So I was wondering how you price your products, and in these projects that you do with partners, for example, the BTT 50 qubit computer, do you try to make money on every sale, or are you happy to also take a loss to build up a customer base?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Of course, with any first customer case, you typically don't earn anything, and you earn through the actual value that it brings to the company instead of amount of funds that comes in the company. And in our case, it is there's no exception to that. we are of course at the same time developing the technology in-house with whatever funding we get through this project, and at the same time together with VTT developing their technological know-how, which I think will be a win-win situation for the future of the quantum, at least in the Finnish ecosystem. So so in terms of the pricing of the quantum computers, that's another a good question, because from all the major quantum computing calls that we have seen so far, there's always some customization here and there, and of course also the specifications, they are very different, and therefore the pricing will be different. We try to of course keep the margins high, but at the same time it's not very easy, because this is not like a really well established product where you can just make 10 of them and then figure out, okay, what's the cost price, but you are making every one of them at the same time. So you have a lot of this non-recurring engineering costs in there, but at the same time we try to, after calculation of the values it brings to the company, not to make a loss.
Okay, thank you. Then I was also wondering, maybe this is quite a general question that you get probably asked a lot, but the scaling up from 5 to 50 qubits is supposedly pretty hard. So what do you think are the main challenges for you guys, and how do you address those? Yeah,
there are many fronts to this. Of course, one of them is like if you get 50 qubits, what will be the quality of the qubits? If you want to maintain the quality or make it even better than the system you have at 5 qubit, then already that's a very huge fabrication or engineering challenge there. And of course, at the same time, if you want to control so many qubits at the same, you need to have like really integrated control hardware and software, because the instrumentation itself is quite expensive if you just buy commercially, and you kind of have to work with your partners to see how you can reduce this cost. And of course, finally, is that once you develop this, is there any sort of exploitation that you can get out of the systems? Like if you establish one system on premise at your own headquarters, and then another one to customer, and then if you move to the next phase of technology, what would you do with the quantum computers that you just tune up? Are you going to warm it up, or are you going to keep on opening up to other potential cloud-based customers?
Okay. Then I have a question that is maybe from an academic standpoint of view. We're always interested to know what everyone else is doing. So how do you balance, and you're having a postdoc as well, right? How do you balance this kind of idea to publish with the need to obviously maintain a competitive advantage and like don't give away your secrets?
Yeah, that's also a very, very good question. There are many layers to this. One, of course, is when you have some new inventions, are you going to keep it as a trade secret, or are you going to publish as patent? That itself already has a really big strategy going on there, because some trade secrets are more valuable, because there's no way, if you patent something, you let the world know, and there's no way that you can check your potential infringement anywhere in competitors' products. Then moving another layer is towards publication of this scientific results, and in our case, we think that, okay, if there's something that we can patent, we typically just patent first and then only publish the results, and sort of keep some of the really critical know-hows internal. But at the same time, as a startup company that are building this high level technologies, you need some sort of credential, right? You need all these really strong publications to show that you are not just a startup doing something random, but you are also really well connected to the scientific community, and we are always balancing all this. Of course, we have internal committees actually reviewing the process as we go, and these committees are quite, I would say, quite successful in working out the different risks and also rewards for different phases in this publication.
All right. Thank you very much again, Kwon.
Thanks.
Any more questions? So we're also right on time for the invited talk by Cambridge Quantum Computing. So I see Simon and Mehdi already here. And yeah, thanks again, Kwon, and you're welcome to stick around if you want to